Hello there, welcome back to the booth here at Mythic Championship VI. Marshall Sutcliffe with Paul Cheon. We just got a big picture view there from Rich and Maria at the news desk on some of the things that are forming down the stretch, but now it's time for us to zoom back in on this tournament to see how things end up panning out. We are ready for the semifinals to begin. It was quite a journey to get here. The format can produce some very long games with some pretty muddled up boards. Our first one, though, is Ondřej Stráský versus Oscar Christensen, and they are all set to go. Now, it is Simic Food in the hands of Ondřej Stráský, and Oscar has brought Sultai Food. A lot of players opting to go with the 4 Noxious Grasp, but a lot of Simic out in the field as well. A good chunk in our top 8, 3 of them, and no Noxious Grasp to be seen for that and Ondřej here.
Yeah, I mean, outside of the Noxious Grasp, we saw from Stráský's side how impressive those 2 copies of Mass Manipulation can be. And as he mentioned in that interview with Tim, that's going to be his game plan. He wants to draw out the games as long as possible to be able to resolve a giant Mass Manipulation, specifically in the pre-sideboarded games. In the pre-boarded games, there's simply no way to interact with that. There's no counterspells. So as a result, if he can get a Mass Manipulation off, steal 2 or 3 permanents, I mean, that is going to be so swinging to the point where it's going to be very difficult for him to lose after that resolves.
Once Upon a Time kicks things off here for Ondřej Stráský. And he found himself a Paradise Druid with it before passing the turn back over to Oscar. Oscar has Fabled Passage. He's going to go get a Swamp. And we'll see what he's got lined up for his turn.
No Planeswalkers in hand, but a couple of answers for Planeswalkers against Stráský. Got the Noxious Grasp and Assassin's Trophy. A very versatile removal spell, but something that you really don't want to be firing off at all, especially early in the matchup because, you know, it's kind of all about the mana. And if you use the Assassin's Trophy on an Oko, you might just accelerate your opponent into a turn 4 Nissa.
There's Paradise Druid to kick things off for Christensen. Likely going to be the same play here from Stráský. He passes the turn back. Paradise Druids for either player. There's a Goose off the top of the library there for Oscar Christensen, but he's going to have his eye on something better than that, I hope.
Nope.
Cancel that order. There's that Goose hitting the battlefield.
And he's missing a land drop here.
Oh, whoa. He has Nissa in hand as well. In fact, at the ready, but he's going to need a land to get there next turn.
And Stráský does have the option here of running out a Wicked Wolf. However, Christensen does have access to 2 mana here, so he has to be mindful of the fact that Oscar can just have Noxious Grasp in hand. And given that Stráský doesn't have a food to save the Wicked Wolf, if he just casts the Wicked Wolf, fight on the stack, target the Gilded Goose, if you kill the wolf in response, the Goose is going to live. So, you know, given that that might be a possibility, Stráský might look to do something else here.
Yeah, it's going to be tough if you let Oscar use up all of his mana so efficiently. And guess what? Oscar does have Noxious Grasp. So Stráský sees the writing on the wall here, says it's just too much if I run this thing out, and he's going to play Hydrate Krasis instead.
Yeah. On top of that, he's got a Nissa who shakes the world in hand and does not have land number 5. So this is good on both ends because now he has a much higher chance of finding land number 5.
So Christensen actually considered using Noxious Grasp there on one of the creatures, decided against it. That had to be tempting for him there to just get rid of the Paradise Druid, right?
Yeah. I think he's going to wait until at least turn 5 to see if Stráský does find a Nissa. But it is tempting to use the Noxious Grasp, because if you use the Noxious Grasp on the Paradise Druid, that does mean that Stráský can't follow next turn up with a Nissa. He's going to be 1 mana short.
Also, you know how it is with the Druid. You know, you got to kind of get it when the window's open. But in the meantime, a land off the top of the library for Oscar Christensen says Nissa, who shakes the world, hits the battlefield. He's going to wake up an Overgrown Tomb and send that into the red zone. And this is a combo that you've talked about a few times.
So big.
Right there, which is the Overgrown Tomb taps for black and an extra green because it's a forest, so he gets to cast Noxious Grasp this turn as well.
Yeah, that was a
Boom.
Tremendous tempo swing. And now Stráský cannot even play out his own Nissa here. and also needs to find lands, and I don't think he found one. So yeah, Stráský in a lot of trouble here.
You can imagine that his hand is completely stacked, and you can see that. Wow, that is an insane hand.
Okay, he did find a forest.
Yeah.
So he's got a Wicked Wolf as an option. He can use it to kill a Paradise Druid that's on the battlefield. Just put more pressure on, just put more creatures into play to maybe have a chance later to take Nissa, or take Nissa down. He can also choose to cast Ether Gust or Brazen Borrower, but not a lot of fantastic options. He could potentially go for the draw step Ether Gust on Nissa, who shakes the world, but looks like he's going to opt for just the main phase here instead.
And to the bottom it goes, says Oscar.
Interesting.
Attack for 2 after playing a forest for Ondřej. Petty Theft is the card that Ondřej Stráský has at the ready now.
So that's what happens. Okay. So you're at 16, I'm at 50. Yeah. Sorry, I just wrote the wrong column. Cool. No problem.
And it looks like the reason why Christensen did not go for Nissa here is he doesn't have food anymore. He can't actually recast the Nissa here. He only has access to 4 mana, so really would rather find lands, develop the board, as he has plenty of other things to do this turn.
And there's a Brazen Borrower, though. It's Petty Theft. I was going to say, not in the graveyard there, Ondřej. That actually goes on an adventure here. But he did return the Wicked Wolf right back to hand. That saves his Hydroid Krasis and, of course, is a major setback mana-wise for Christensen, who's still stuck on 4.
Oh, and that was big. Another land here for Stráský. He can now play out his own Nissa.
Huge there for Ondřej. He's going to animate an island, which is going to allow him to attack for 5. He's thinking.
Question is whether or not he wants to attack with the Krasis. The attack with the land is, of course, free because it has vigilance, but does he want to keep the Krasis back just to protect Nissa's loyalty?
Ondřej decides, nope, I want to get in for the full 5, knocks Oscar down to 10.
So Oscar also drawing some heavy hitters, but really having a difficult time drawing lands. Drew Casualties of War off the top, but only 4 mana sources in play. He could get it up to 5 if he chooses to make a food with the Gilded Goose, but that would be tapping some precious resources, and he might need to continue wanting to add to the board here.
Yeah, he keeps on having his spells bounce back to hand. It's an interesting play pattern that you see from Ondřej Stráský, as he'll use the Ether Gusts and Petty Thefts to keep the opponent off balance for quite a while, and then sometimes when they finally get their feet under them, it's like mass manipulation, just steal all your stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he has done a great job of just kind of playing that tempo game. You're using 2 mana to bounce 5 mana permanents, and as Stráský alluded to earlier, he just wants this game to go long. The longer this game goes, the more turns you spend just trying to play out your 5 mana spells over and over again, the higher the chance I'm going to eventually get to that mass manipulation, steal your Planeswalker, and hope to win the game off of that.
Okay, Christensen looks like he's going to give this Wicked Wolf another shot.
Probably eating the Krasis here.
And that looks like the best he could do, so he's going to have to pass a turn back now to Stráský.
Oh, but Stráský now has so much mana. Doesn't he have a mass manipulation in hand? Let's take a look here. He has access to 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 11 mana.
All forests on the battlefield.
So with 11 mana, he can cast a mass manipulation for 3 and steal 3 of Christensen's cards. So he can take Paradise Druid, Overgrown Tomb, and Wicked Wolf or the Goose, and Christensen's just going to have 2 mana sources left.
The crazy part is that Ondřej also drew
Yep.
a Hydroid Crisis for the turn, so he has so many great options, and this is just one of the abusive ways that you can win. And look at that, Ondřej Stráský with that huge mass manipulation, X equals 3, takes down game number 1. Oscar Christensen just packs him up.
I don't want him to get slip away.
You know he wasn't going to be able to come back from that. So Oscar just says, okay, you got me. And by the way, that was the perfect example of that play pattern that we were talking about earlier, Paul, where it's kind of like petty theft your thing, you know, get in for a little bit, Ether Gust to spell or Ether Gust to Planeswalker back. And then it was just that one turn window where Ondřej turned the tables completely when he landed that Nissa, and then ultimately it culminated with, he actually had multiple options there. The mass manipulation was simply the most direct route to victory, so he took it.
Yeah, I mean, that game was just one of those situations where Oscar, you know, just really needed to find more mana sources. I mean,
Yeah.
he actually made the heads-up play. When he saw what Stráský was doing there, bouncing the Nissa, it's really tempting to put Nissa back on top of your
Yeah.
library. But he recognized, like, look, he's got so many ways to bounce permanents. I need to keep hitting my land drops for me to have a chance to win this game. So he put it on the bottom, still wasn't able to find those lands, and then Stráský eventually got to his lands, untap with Nissa, and when you untap with Nissa with either of these decks, a lot of stuff can happen.
Yeah, X spells plus Nissa, that's the way to go.
Combo.
Yep. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll be right back down into the feature match area. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back to the feature match area here at Mythic Championship VI. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm with Paul Cheon. That's right, Ondřej. Time to wake up, buddy. You picked up the first game off of that big mass manipulation, but we're heading into game number 2. And just as a reminder, we're in semifinal number 1. We do have the other semifinalists staged behind. You can see Paulo, Vitor, Damo, Rosa there behind our judges. Sebastian Pozzo sitting across from him as well. And we'll be keeping you up to date on that one as it gets going. But for now, we're playing a best 3 out of 5 between Ondřej Stráský and Oskar Christensen, with Ondřej having picked up game number 1. This game is pre-sideboarded, so it's as if it were another game 1. After this game, we'll start consulting sideboards, and we'll bring you the details on that as well when it pops up. But for now, Ondřej looks like he has a very tough decision on this mulligan, or I should say on what to put back, and we're underway here. So Ondřej on 6 cards. Overgrown Tomb.
I like the untapped Overgrown Tomb Once Upon a Time. Clearly he already has the Gilded Goose in hand, but casting the Once Upon a Time anyways. It'll be kind of interesting if he gets a basic forest, because then he could have played the basic forest and played the
What's going on here? Oskar just spewed 2 life. Is that?
There's a chance, right? It could be relevant.
Yes. And look at Ondřej. He's like, I'll show you how to do this. I will start my turn with Once Upon a Time, and even found the forest as well, apparently.
He also has a lot more untapped forest, to be fair, as he's only on 2 colors.
Gilded Goose number 2, as well as a breeding pool, this time tapped for Oskar Christensen. He's going to pass a turn back.
Very explosive start here. Of course, Oskar needs to be mindful of both Brazen Borrower and Ether Gust. That's what Stráský's basically kind of signaling that he could have here.
5 mana available here on turn 3. Looks like he's going to use 4 of it to cast a little baby Hydroid Crisis, just 2.
Yeah, that's the one where you don't really care if it gets bounced, right? Because it's a cast trigger, so even if it gets Ether Gusted, you're going to draw your card and gain your life.
Yep.
Gilded Goose for Stráský. And he plays the land and passes the turn back. Still threatening the potential of an Ether Gust here, and in fact he does have it.
Curious to see what Oskar is going to run with here. Does have a land here, but he only has 1 food, so he only has access to 5 mana this turn if he plays his land. He can choose to just kind of take a turn off and make some food just to make sure he has some additional mana here with the Gilded Geese, knowing that if you run out an Oko, it's pretty likely to get countered.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Oko Thief Krantz goes on the stack, and Ondřej says, well, I do have it. Ether Gust. Back on top for Oskar Christensen. He does have his land drop for the turn as well, and he'll be done there. Only 1 more food left for the Goose.
And Stráský, right now, Oskar doesn't have access to the mana. Might just run out of Nissa, who shakes the world here. Kind of hope for the best. Hope that Oskar doesn't have one of the 4 Noxious Grass that he's playing. Currently, Oskar, if he is able to make a 3/3 on his turn, you know, in the form of either Oko or Nissa, that's only going to be 5 damage. So his Nissa will be safe if it ticks up. The other line is just running out, you know, a 2/2 Hydroid Crisis, which isn't especially exciting. So this might just be the window here to just run out the Nissa and again, kind of cross your fingers and hope that Oskar does not have a Noxious Grasp.
He also gets in for 3 damage by doing this. And let's see if Oskar has the answer.
Well, Oskar just needed an untapped land here, right? He has Casualties of War and access to 4 lands and a single food here with the Gilded Goose. So he is he can't cast it this turn, but very likely to be able to do it next turn, given his hand. He's got a Once Upon a Time. He's got an Oko. Oko generates mana because he has the pair of geese in play. And I'd be pretty surprised if Oscar doesn't get a land here.
Finds a Fabled Passage, puts it into play. He's going to go get him Forest with it. So this does set him up for next turn, right?
Yeah.
But in the meantime, he's going to fall a little bit further behind. And also, you know, if you are sitting in Oscar's seat and he can replay the Oko here, well, anytime you let your opponent untap with a Nissa, it's scary.
Absolutely. I mean, he could potentially just turn one of his geese or his food into a 3/3 just to make sure he has enough blockers. Because Ondřej will get an additional activation from the Nissa, so he'll have a pair of 3/3s to pressure that Oko that's in play. Next turn, if Oko lives, he can still just create a food for the mana.
Ooh, look at this. Make a big elk.
Yeah, that's a 5/5. We saw just the hard cast Lovestruck Beast earlier just kind of halt all the offenses.
Mm-hmm. It does bring it crashing down to the ground, but yeah, doing a good Lovestruck Beast impersonation is that elk over there, and that could do quite a good job of holding back some of these 3/3 lands that are likely to come crashing in against Oko's loyalty.
The really nice thing about targeting specifically Hydra Crisis, outside of the fact that it's a 5/5, is that Ondřej's main way to interact with creatures is by bouncing them, right?
Oh, that's
so
smart.
If you get your Hydra Crisis Ether Gusted or Brazen Borrowered or Petty Thefted, you're still okay because you're just now going to be able to untap and just cast a giant Hydra Crisis and draw a bunch more cards.
Yeah, we call that an upgrade.
Yeah. But Stráský also just has a very good turn here, right? He got to untap with Nissa, and he has one of the big X-Spell payoff cards in his hand. He's got a Hydrate Crisis with 3 forests in play. That's 8, 9, potentially 10 mana here. He could play an 8/8 Hydrate Crisis.
This is what Oscar Christensen was worried about when he passed the turn. He really wanted to have that untapped mana last turn to use Casualties of War to prevent this type of thing from happening, but here it is. Hydrate Crisis hits the battlefield, and it's 7.
7. Looks like he values having an additional blocker to protect the Nissa instead of drawing an additional card with that forest.
Mm-hmm.
So no good attack here from Stráský. And next turn, you know, Oscar's going to be able to play his big spell. He's got that Casualties of War, and it's going to get a lot of permanence here, right? We have it's going to be able to get Nissa, who shakes the world, a 7/7 Hydra Crisis, and one of those animated lands.
Very nice. There it is, Casualties of War. Now, this is a card that we heard Oscar talk to Tim about earlier on the air here. This is his version of the go-over-the-top card for the matchup. This is main deck. He's got a couple of them, but he mentioned that Ondřej also has his own go-over-the-top card as well. He's got 2 Mass Manipulation.
And also interesting thing to note that is he went for the island there. Typically,
speaking of mass manipulation,
right, typically you go after forests because your opponents can play cards like Nissa, right? And having more forests in play means you can generate more mana. But specifically in this matchup, the most important card in the late game for Stráský is mass manipulation. And in order to cast it, you need 4 blue sources in play. So going after that lone island makes a lot of sense.
So now Oscar Christensen starting to move his advantage forward with Oko. He doesn't have the board state to slam the door on this game, but that was a nice step forward there for Oscar. And now it's very much on Ondřej Stráský to recover here.
Yeah. he has access to 4 or 5 mana. If he plays a land, he can just run out of Hydro Crisis for 4 here and just kind of rebuild, start putting pressure on the battlefield. A 4/4 Flying Crisis. A start against kind of trying to chip away at that Oko that's in play.
And of course, the 4/4 is a sweet spot with all the Elks and animated lands running around in Standard. One of the luxuries of Oko, though, is you can soak up a hit.
Yeah.
You got
a lot of
attacked for
loyalty.
3, and Oscar was like, sure. I'd rather have my Gilded Goose on the battlefield than have these 3 loyalty. You may have them. And there's a big Hydroid Crisis, a nice 4/4 here for Stráský. But Christensen still has a good amount of gasoline going in the tank here himself.
Yeah, and I think he's interested in trying to preserve that Oko if he can. And the best way to do that, couple of options. You can just turn the Hydro Crisis into a 7/7 ground creature and chump. Or, I mean, he's got that Wicked Wolf in his hand, so he can run it out, target the Hydro Crisis, ability on the stack, sacrifice a food, give it indestructible. And also, given the fact that Stráský doesn't have access to 2 mana for a bounce spell, he knows that this is going to be safe. Because that interaction is extremely powerful. It's a huge tempo swing anytime you're playing against this deck where if Ondřej has access to 2 mana and you have a Wicked Wolf, you cast it and you bounce it in response, all of a sudden you've traded 2 mana for 4 mana. And that's a really, really big deal in this matchup. Typically in the Sultai mirror, if you have a food in play and you run out the Wicked Wolf, you feel safe, right? Because you still just have that food to sacrifice. But of course you can't interact that way with a bounce spell. And here you see, I want to say the slight downside for having the full 4 copies of Once Upon a Time. Of course, it's fantastic in the early game, but here, you know, when you're slightly behind and you really need to find action right away, it is a little bit of a cost, right? You have to spend 2 mana to go find that threat, and, you know, every mana you spend here is a big deal. I mean, there's so much Stráský can do. You can create food with the Goose. You have just a lot of different options available.
Looks like the Forest is going to go ahead and attack Oko. Oscar quickly reached over to the loyalty die, but he's decided, no, I'm actually going to throw one of my Gilded Geese in front.
Means that he might be interested in the -5 ability on Oko. We haven't seen too much of that yet, but could trade, for example, that food for the animated forest.
Stráský taking a look at potentially playing an Oko from his hand. And there it is.
Looks like we're playing some defense here. Now, Stráský will not have access to that forest as a mana source, but he's got a 6/6 in play, and that sizing is perfect, especially given the fact that Oscar has a 5/5 Hydroid Crisis, 5/5 ground creature in play. So now he's got the perfect blocker here set up, which might buy him enough time because, you know, again, Stráský wants to get to that late game, wants to find those islands, wants to find mass manipulation.
Yeah, we heard Stráský say that earlier in an interview, that he felt like if the games went long, it would favor him. Which can explain why he's here right now, by the way, because the games did go long in his other match. There's Noxious Grasp, though, to take out that forest, the 6/6 one with the counters on it. And as you mentioned, that was the perfect foil for the 5/5 on the other side, but now the way is clear.
Yeah, that was kind of the last line of defense here against the 5/5 and that Wicked Wolf. And now Oscar gets a pretty clean attack here on the Oko. And Stráský has to make either some chump blocks or just let Oko die.
And it looks like Stráský's going to favor keeping his mana creatures around rather than the Oko, and says, you got it. Oko hits the graveyard. Another food token now for Christensen. And he's got a Paradise Druid as well. So make a food on end step for Stráský using Gilded Goose, but this is a big turn for Stráský. He's going to say, don't call it a comeback. It starts right now.
Yeah. I mean, he's really looking for something like a manipulation, but it needs to be for at least 2 probably here for him to try to come back. So he needs to get access to 8 mana.
Well, instead it's going to be Once Upon a Time here for Ondřej.
Oh.
Oh, no, all the good stuff that he can't get.
Right, those are the cards that he wanted.
This is a mass manipulation in that pile, Paul.
Right, and the best card that he ended up getting here was a Gilded Goose.
Yikes. And of course, to see all those powerful cards go to the bottom of your library is no fun either. I'm sure Oscar Christensen disagrees with me, though I guess he didn't actually see them go to the bottom of Ondřej's library. What can Ondřej do here? Play the Gilded Goose?
Play a goose. Make some food.
Well,
maybe a Once Upon a Time. Try to find a big Hydro Crisis next turn to play. I mean, he's going to have access to 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 mana next turn, right? So that would buy him a bunch of cards. But, you know, Oscar's going to get in for a pretty sizable attack next turn. He's got a 5/5, a 4/4 Wicked Wolf, and the ability to make another 3/3 attacker with that Oko that's in play. And look at the last card in his hand.
Is it a Crisis?
Right? It's a Crisis.
Oh, yeah. So things looking very good for Oscar Christensen here in game number 2. Stráský took game number 1. But Oscar doing a very good job of applying pressure while keeping Ondřej Stráský a bit off balance. And there we go. The 5/5, the 3/3, and the 4/4 all coming into the red zone.
And Oscar can even run out land 6/6 Hydrate Crisis to follow this up. He would have to tap all his creatures, and maybe that would leave the Oko vulnerable. But, I mean, the Oko is at 9 loyalty right now.
Mm-hmm. Stráský in the tank here about if or what to block and how. And he seems to have concluded that Gilded Goose in front of the 5/5 is where he wants to be.
Yeah, and I think now we're kind of in one of those situations where you're so behind. This is where you go, all right, what are the cards that I can draw in succession to come back from this, right? And Oscar just played out a giant Hydro Crisis. And, you know, simply put, I think it's just mass manipulation here off the top, stealing a Crisis and that Oko.
Okay, well, it doesn't necessarily... He's going to use Once Upon a Time, and he found, I think the best thing he found, Paul, was a Wicked Wolf, which, as you mentioned, just not even close to enough here.
Yeah, he could cast the Wicked Wolf. I suppose he could get the Hydrate Crisis off the battlefield.
So this really needs to be mass manipulation here?
I mean, he might be able to survive for another turn given all the food that he has in play, but...
He found a land.
Yep.
And that's going to do it. Ondřej Stráský is going to scoop him up. He just simply could not find what he needed when he needed it to try to claw his way back into that game. And we've seen this sequence happen a lot of times where a player will get ahead and their opponent will have a window to get back into it, but it's short and you need to have the right thing at the right time or else it snowballs out of control. And that's what happened for Oscar there. So Oscar is going to pick up game number 2, and the players are going to start going to sideboards. You can see we've got Sebastian Pozzo and Paulo Vitor Damo Rosa underway as well. Sebastian having won game 1 back there. We are going to take a short break. When we come back, though, we're going to be checking out that match and seeing what's going on there. So stick with us. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Everybody, look, it's Brad Nelson here. We're going to crack this pack of Throne of Eldraine. Do the honors, if you would, sir. And let me know what you're thinking about as you lay these cards out on the table. Like, ooh, you're hiding them from me? No, no, we want to see. Okay, which ones you like, which ones you don't like. What's going through your mind here?
All right, so far, I do like white. and green for like common first picks if nothing really excites me. This is a tough one actually, because
Ooh, I like a tough one.
So Orso Knight is actually a pretty good card, but black tends to not be that aggressive. There's very few aggressive decks. Even though a lot of teammates have told me I should take it and I should trust them because they're better at limited than me, I have found that I only win with creatures with power and toughness, just in general. So I'm going to take...
0/0's not up your alley.
No, it's not. So I'm going to take out Muscle, try to draft a bunch of big green creatures, have high power, high toughness, and use that to leverage.
Oh, come on. Lucky Clover's sitting right here, Brad.
Maybe a few years ago, but I have not felt that lucky lately, so I'm going to stay away from that as well. It's a little too tricky for me. No, I really like green-white strategies, and even like green-blue I've been successful with, and a lot of that's based on adamant green creatures, and spells, I guess. So I'm definitely first picking out Muscle, and everyone's going to tell me how wrong I was.
Well, that's what Magic's all about, right? The ability to tell people how wrong their decisions were.
At least in my experience, it is.
I've got to ask though, this Ardenvale Tactician, you mentioned white. I know some people really like this card.
Yeah, when I started drafting this format, a lot of people said they didn't like white cards, but I was winning and seeing a lot of success, and that was one of the best ones. I think that's the best white common. I just really like green, and a lot of it has to do with outmuscle and a lot of the early creatures. I've just had a lot of good experience with the card.
All right, well, let's try and outmuscle our opponents in this draft. It's our pack one, pick one.
And welcome back to the feature match area here at Mythic Championship VI. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm in the booth with Paul Cheon. And I know I speak for Paul when I say he's very happy that you've joined us today. I'm right, Paul, right?
Yes.
I knew it. See, I had the read.
So
Let's take a look at our back table here where we have Sebastian Pozzo and Paulo, Vitor, Damo, Rosa. And they are in game number 2. Sebastian taking game 1 from the Hall of Famer. And this one looks like it's well and truly underway, although I do see a significant mana advantage there for Sebastian Pozzo, at least as far as lands go. And it looks like we may have come in at a very critical juncture here. That was Oko getting taken off the battlefield, though now that we say it, Sebastian's at 2.
He is at 2, and Paulo has a 5/5 elk and a 6/6 elk that looks like a Nissa animated forest and a Paradise Druid. So Paulo very close to closing this out. He's got an Ether Gust in hand.
Yeah, they both do, actually. So can Pozzo use the Ether Gust to survive? He has 2 food and a Gilded Goose plus the Ether Gust.
Yeah, the Ether Gust is going to be fantastic here for Pozzo. So he can use it on the forest. I believe
There's also a mobilized district in the lands there, I believe, Paul.
Yeah, you don't want to be bouncing the Crisis, but you can target the forest because it becomes green, and Paulo can't do anything to respond to an Ether Gust here.
No.
And then Sebastian, you know, with the 5/5 coming in, he can either opt to just sacrifice both of the food to stay alive, or chump with the goose and make a food. I wonder if Paulo's also considering just using Ether Gust on the Gilded Goose, just to get a blocker out of the way, to ensure that he can get in for more damage.
No, Paulo says that's fine. We'll just tuck that that forest away. And now Sebastian Pozzo can just sacrifice both foods.
Go to 3.
And yeah, take the hit here and just go back down to 3. And that lets him keep the Gilded Goose on the battlefield. And Paulo, he's out of gas. He does have an Ether Gust, but this is a touchy spot here.
Ooh, but Sebastian draws a land. But because he has access to all this mana, the Gilded Goose actually just becomes a reasonable mana sink here, right?
He really does.
For every 4 lands that he taps, he can make a food and gain 3 life. And Paulo actually doesn't even attack here because Sebastian has the option to activate Mobilized District and double block with the Crisis and the Mobilized District. And Paulo, sure, he could use Ether Gust on the Hydro Crisis to ensure that his creature lives, but you do not want to be bouncing Hydro Crisis right now.
Exactly.
So I think, I mean, Pozzo is clawing back in this. He has the ability to gain a bunch of life, and I mean, it feels like it's anybody's game at this point.
It really does.
Despite the life total.
And he's going to pass the turn back with no cards in hand. Is that Brazen Borrower off the top?
That was, but Paulo doesn't have enough of an offense here, and Pozzo, again, able to gain so much life. He can make 2 food and gain 6 life this turn. Oh, he just played a goose, so he can.
Yeah.
Yes, he can make 1 food.
Making 1 food and then gain the 3 life, but that's still quite strong here, given that Paulo Vitor Damo Rosa once again has no profitable attack. That mobilized district's doing work.
I wonder if Sebastian wants. Oh, look at this! Sebastian actually keeping the food around, not even using all the mana there. Maybe thinking about potential Wicked Wolves off the top or other ways to use that food.
That's right. Having the 2 food makes a big deal for the Wicked Wolf, considering that he's facing down a 5/5 Elk on the other side.
And yeah, he drew a Wicked Wolf off the top.
Oh,
so
he even hit it?
he did.
Wow, good planning there by Sebastian Pozzo. Well, you never know. I might draw a Wicked Wolf. Just draws at the next turn.
The issue with the Wicked Wolf here is Paulo with 2 cards in hand. Sebastian probably has to know that Paulo probably has a bounce spell, and casting a Wicked Wolf, sacrificing 2 food to kill the Hydrate Quasis, and then having a Wicked Wolf get bounced in response is too big of a blowout.
Makes me like mildly sick to my stomach just to think of it.
Right, which is why he just has chosen not to run it out. If anything, he's probably just going to wait till Paulo taps the Paradise Druid and tries to get a free one there. Nope.
He's going to target, but now he feels like he has enough additional food in the pantry here that he can go for it. And the interesting thing is he also could just recast it if it gets bounced and do it again.
Right.
The funny part is Paulo can bounce it twice.
Right. And the one, and with the Brazen Borrower, Paulo cannot actually bounce his own Hydrate Craces.
No.
As the text on it says, you can only bounce your opponent's permanents.
Mm-hmm. So there we go. Petty Theft is going to return the Wolf to hand. And that's a pretty nice tempo swing there for Paulo, because it's 4 mana plus 2 foods just disappear. But Pozzo can also just either redo it now if he doesn't think Paulo has anything left, or he can just wait, make 2 more foods, and just sort of repeat this process again.
I think given how patient he was last turn, he might wait again. But at the same time, Paulo now has only 1 card in hand. What's the chances he has another bounce spell? We all know he has it. But you know, when you play games of Magic, you could just kind of play the odds and the numbers, and you think about the percentage chance your opponent might have a specific card based on, you know, whether or not you've seen copies of that card.
That's
so
right.
Given that you've seen the Brazen Borrower here, maybe Pozzo now thinks that it's safe to fire off this Wicked Wolf again.
Yeah, if you ever wonder what Magic players are thinking about in positions like this, it's that. They're saying, how many of these bounce spells have I seen? And given the previous situation, say the turn prior, would you have used one had you had access to it? And then they weigh that against the risk of not doing the thing, and then they come up with their answer. Magic is difficult, but that's what they're doing. Whoa, whoa, what did he get?
A draw. That is a mass manipulation off the top for Paulo. He can steal 2 permanents here if he wants. He has access to 8 mana, so he can steal Hydroid Krasis and probably a Gilded Goose here. That gives him a clean attack with the Brazen Borrower and also the 5/5 Hydroid Krasis. That was a huge draw from Paulo.
Yeah, so that would be 9 damage coming in. Or 8?
8 damage coming in.
8 damage coming in, so Pozzo will not die. He could either sack food or fire up the district, but that was massive for Paulo Vitor Damo Rosa. Exactly what he needed. Oh, it looks like he may combine the 2 here.
I wonder if is he just going to go for a manipulation for 1?
And then leave up Ether Gust for, or either use or leave up Ether Gust for something else.
Yeah.
Remember, we know, and by I mean Paulo knows about the Wicked Wolf in hand here for Pozzo, and maybe considering that as part of his equation.
Right. He doesn't have a Brazen Borrower, because the worst possible thing that could happen for Paulo is if Paulo steals Hydroid Krasis, then Pozzo has Brazen Borrower in hand, and now because Paulo is in control of the Hydroid Krasis, he can bounce the Hydroid Krasis, but it would go back to Sebastian Pozzo's hand.
Right. Well, here they come, the 5-5 on the ground and the 3-1 flyer. Again, Pozzo has many ways to not die this turn, but that was a big swing for Paulo Vitor Damo Rosa.
So
he's trying to set up a board where Pozzo loses some board material here, maybe goes for the Wicked Wolf. That gets put on the top or bottom of the library, and that could open up a window for Paulo to win this game.
And Paulo only recognizing that the important card that he needs to steal is the Krasis here, because he now has the Ether Gust for the Wicked Wolf.
That's right.
So Paulo setting this up beautifully with that timely top deck of the mass manipulation.
Sebastian made and sacrificed a food on end step there to put himself, after the damage, from 1 back up to 4.
And another land.
What can he really do here?
Well, he's gonna have to target these flyers, right? So
yes.
he can get the 4/4 Hydro Krasis off, or go after the Brazen Borrower, and there are merits to both. If he wants the Wicked Wolf to live, he's gonna have to sacrifice the food regardless. Now, of course, the Hydro Krasis is a bigger creature, but if you don't go after the Hydro Krasis, you then give yourself the opportunity to draw a card like Brazen Borrower, which if you bounce that Hydro Krasis, it's gonna go back to Pozzo's hand. So that's a very real thing to consider. And as you can see, he is going after the Brazen Borrower here, because now Sebastian, love this play. He's giving himself more opportunities here to come back and win this game, because look at how much mana he has on the battlefield. If he now draws a Brazen Borrower, that's just an extra Hydro Krasis for him.
Mm-hmm.
But Paulo does have a gigantic attack here. And also, keep in mind, Paulo has the Ether Gust.
And there it is. He springs his trap.
Probably needs to bottom this, because I don't think the Wicked Wolf is
right
the card that'll get it done. So we're gonna probably see. Let's see. He has access to
7 mana.
7 mana. So we're probably gonna see like a chump block here on the 5/5. And then some food and some life gain here.
Yeah, he's got plenty of mana to do it.
He also has access to Mobilized District, but it wouldn't actually kill anything outside of the Paradise Druid if it chose to block.
You can see Paulo going through the different iterations. What if he does the Mobilized District? How much food can he make? What could he block? Pozzo down to a very precarious 4 here. Definitely facing a lethal attack at this point. He's going to be forced to do something.
Yeah, as you can see, he's picking up that Paradise Druid. He's basically just running the numbers here to see if it's safe to attack with Paradise Druid, because clearly the other creatures, the flyers and the 5/5 Krasis, those are all safe attacks. But is it going to be worthwhile to attack with the Paradise Druid here as well?
Yep. Everything into the red zone here for Paulo Vitor Damo Rosa, looking to even things up at 1 game apiece against Sebastian Pozzo, who took game number 1.
If Sebastian chump blocks the 3/1 and the 5/5, he can still make 2 food and sack 1 of the food tokens, and he would go down to 1.
Yeah, that looks like it's exactly his plan here. Yikes, this is a precarious position. Are there top decks for Pozzo?
I mean, I'm thinking Hydrate Krasis might be something.
It definitely wasn't Oko, Thief of Crowns, and that is game number 2 going to Paulo Vitor Damo Rosa. So they're all tied up at a game apiece there on that back table. On the front table, Ondřej Stráský just won game number 3, so he's up 2 games to 1 over Oscar Christensen as we kind of hit the middle stage of our semifinals here. Thank you so much for joining us. We're super happy to have you along here. These are tough, grindy matchups. We've had them in the quarters and now in the semis as well. We anticipate them going forward, and the players' focus has to be tack sharp here down the stretch, because these boards get really complicated.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see, like in this specific matchup, the Simic Food mirror, there's a little more nuance to it, right?
Yeah.
Because now you're not just playing around hard removal spells. You're playing around tempo, bounce, and bounce is extremely important, especially when you're considering cards like mass manipulation that Paulo has access to, right? Now with the mass manipulation, he also has to be mindful of some of the cards that he might be stealing. Maybe you don't want to steal Hydroichrasis because if your opponent bounces it, all of a sudden they get the Hydroichrasis back. So now this is a much more interesting matchup where there's a little back and forth in terms of, you know, the decisions Paulo has to make in terms of what he wants to steal, and even Sebastian just, you know, when is he going to be holding on to those Brazen Powers and when is he going to fire those off? Just because if the games go long, you have to anticipate Paulo's eventually going to find one of those manipulations.
Yeah, you know, it's really showed the flexibility of both Aethergust and Brazen Borrower and its adventure Petty Theft. We've seen them used in the earlier parts of games to knock opponents off balance and to make sure that you don't fall behind in that tug of war that you get with Oko and Nissa and those type of cards. But we saw this here as a much later game solution to a problem that Paulo, Vitor, Damo, and Rosa had in, I just need to push through the last chunks of damage here, and he was able to get blockers out of the way to do that later. Really impressive cards.
Yeah. And another card that seems far less impressive, you know, we've seen how dominant Wicked Wolf could be against black removal, right? Because you have all the food available, you could just make it indestructible, and it's extremely resilient. It looks actively bad. You know, there's just so many spots here where if your opponent, you know, Sebastian Pozzo is playing 8 bounce spells, right? For 2 mana, you're casting the wolf. If you want to trade up, you're going to have to use food as well. And then if your opponent just bounces your wolf, all of a sudden you're set back so much. I'm actually just curious to see how many Wicked Wolves are going to stay in the deck after sideboard, given just the sheer number of bounce spells that are available in each deck.
Yeah, it's interesting because normally you do think of Wicked Wolf as one of the primary payoffs for a food deck like this. But as we've seen, cards like this, cards like Casualties of War post-sideboard can become liabilities quite quickly. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take another short break, but when we come back, we'll be right back into semifinal action here from Mythic Championship VI. Don't go anywhere.
And welcome back to the booth here at Mythic Championship 6 Friday night, joined by Eduardo Sajgalic to take us through the back half of the semi-finals. We've already seen Ondřej Stráský go up against Oscar Christensen on the front table, and out the back, Pozzo against Damo de Rosa. We're going to steer the ship home towards the finals, my friend. It's great to have your company here live from Richmond in the United States. Let's head down to the feature match area right now and get underway with our next game. I understand that Ondřej Stráský is currently up 2-1 against Oscar Christensen. So Stráský is actually in a position where he can take this match out with a single game win.
Right, again, we're playing a best of 5. So with Stráský being up 2 games just to win. But look at that hand. Triple Gilded Goose. Just a demonstration on how important mana is. It's okay to not have a fret as long as you've got the golden eggs to lay.
Triple Forest, triple Gilded Goose, picking up an Ether Gust from his first draw step there. And Christensen also on double Goose himself. So neither player short of food nor mana here. And an Oko as a pickup from Stráský. That's the perfect draw for him here.
What I liked is that Stráský actually stopped before drawing the card and formulated a plan regardless of the card drawn. Essentially trying to figure out what could Christensen have? Then saw there was an Oko, but just stuck to the plan of having Aether Gust rather than turn 2 Oko.
So Gooses all the way here for Stráský rather than playing that turn 2 Oko. Christensen may have another idea with what looks like a 4-mana play. We're going to see Vraska Golgari Queen played now.
And it's important to note here, had Stráský just run out the Oko Fief of Crowns, it would have simply died to this Vraska Golgari Queen. So a kind of heads-up play from these players in post-board games with more removal, and you have more time. You don't need to jam your Oko on turn 2. You don't need to jam your Nissa who shakes the world on turn 4 or even free it. It's about Veil of Summer, and it's about being able to answer what your opponent does. Vraska Golgari Queen a little hard here for Stráský because, unfortunately, with the follow-up play of only Oko, putting a tempo clock on Vraska, not so great.
We are going to see Ether Gust here by the look of things from Stráský. He's certainly thinking about it. Look at this handsome chap as he considers what his move is going to be. Yes, there it is, the Ether Gust. But that's going to be met with Oscar Christensen with a Veil of Summer.
What? Wait, wasn't the Vraska on the stack? Yeah, the dice aren't on there.
Like on the stack? Yeah. I'm going to put it... Oh, shit.
Okay,
well,
there we
anyways.
go. A rare insight into the mind of Oscar Christensen's thought process there. Now, Veil of Summer, of course, it will draw Christensen a card, but it does mean as Ether Gust targeted Vraska before she entered play, it's actually not going to be able to do anything about it. So a slight fumble there from Christensen as, of course, Veil of Summer does not prevent Ether Gust from, quote-unquote, countering the card because it doesn't actually counter it.
No, it puts it on top or on the bottom of the library. It doesn't say the word counter target spell. By removing it from the stack, it doesn't exist. And Veil of, and you know, when I was at the desk, I talked a lot about that, and you kind of saw why Veil of Summon against Aether Gust can be a little dicey at times.
Mm-hmm. But it is not the end of the world for the Dane here, as he will pick up an extra card because a blue spell was cast.
I believe
so
also
just more or less cycling it.
I believe the Vraska also went to the bottom, so now this Oko is kind of free to reign.
So a bit of a lucky break here for Stráský as he plays out his 3rd Golden Goose. Oko as well, up to 6, makes another food.
And it makes sense that Oscar Christensen put the Vraska at the bottom because there was no food for the Gilded Goose, and Oscar was going to miss a land drop. So try to draw a land to unlock that Nissa Who Shakes the World and the Hydroid Crisis. I think Stráský's managed to reverse a pretty difficult situation way in favor. Drawing, of course, good cards, but making the most use of the cards previously available in order to leverage his Oko Fief of Crowns and Nissa Who Shakes the World. I think Stráský really played this one really finely.
Absolutely, and here is that Nissa Who Shakes the World, and immediately we're going to see Elka food token here and a forest get in for 6. So Stráský starting to put the pressure on Oscar Christensen here.
And Oscar forced to take a turn off in order to recharge the mana on these Gilded Goose.
Very aggressive permanent placement here from Ondřej Stráský. That's a power move, certainly. Shoving all those cards forward, getting up in your opponent's brain zone. Love to see that.
I like the idea of harassing your opponent with geese.
Oh yeah,
Like-
I mean they are one of nature's most evil creatures, of course. Recently highlighted in a very high profile video game, and I mean I've been scared of geese all my life, so I'll tell you what, terrifying animals they are. And right now,
There's 6 of them in play.
exactly, it's bringing back some very vivid memories from my childhood. Here we go. Next up for Christensen, let's see what he's all about here. For 4 mana.
Deploying the Wicked Wolf here, and it makes sense because Nissa would be too easily attacked by this combination of Oko plus Nissa who shakes the world. So I like this line from Oscar Christensen to first and foremost make sure that the board is stabilized before deploying the Nissa.
Back to Stráský now with his army of geese at the ready. Do you want to know a goose fact? Do you want to subscribe to Goose Facts here? You know how geese always fly in a V, right? One of the arms of the V is always longer than the other. Do you know what that is? There's always more geese in that
There's
one.
always more geese.
There's always more geese in the longer arm. That's why it's longer.
Yeah. I see a multiple blue card in Stráský's hand. I'm just double checking. There is 1 copy of Gadwick, and it seems like Stráský top decked it with Nissa who shakes the world in
Well,
play.
he's going to draw a whole stack of cards here. My goodness.
What a draw
me.
that draw from Stráský is unbelievable.
This is one of the mirror breakers in this matchup. It puts you so far ahead, can help to manage the board. I mean, only the 1 forest in play here, but still, even with the, oh, there's a second one as well, so that's huge. Nissa is going to produce a
That is going to be
metric ton of mana here.
equals 6. 6 cards for Ondřej Stráský. Really pulling ahead in this.
Yeah, just completely refreshing, refilling the hand here. Great stuff from him. Gadwick the Wizened now. I mean, doesn't dominate the board, but certainly has refueled this young Czech superstar here. So he's pushing forward and doing a great job of really closing in on that semi-final victory here.
And the reason this was big is not just, well, 6 cards is obviously a lot, but it's also because Christensen was behind on board, but ahead on resources with availability, with cards in hand, with Crisis, Nissa who shakes the world also in hand. But now Stráský has it all. Stráský has the board, has the resource advantage in hand, and also is threatening Oscar Christensen's life total at 8. All this additional pressure is adding up, and there's a Gadwick the Wizened in play as well. That's a lot of damage that can be pushed through by any blue spell, like say that Oko Fief of Crowns.
So here's Oko now for Christensen as he looks to put a Planeswalker on the battlefield, but Stráský at the moment with 2 of them unanswered and an army of 3/3s, be it Elks, be it Forests, be it Gadwick the Wizened, and on top of that, a full grip. So that Gadwick was huge here for Stráský, ripping cards off the top of his library like it was going out of style. And now, I mean, he's got his pick of the litter. In hand, Paradise Druid, Oko, Wicked Wolf, Once Upon a Time, and 3 lands. He's basically just drawn a new opening hand after having already played for 5 turns.
It's a pretty good opening hand at that, but like a lot of options available to Stráský. First things after this, considering how this all panned out, Stráský's just considering, okay, what's the actual plan? Do I want to get this Oko Fief of Crowns off the table, or do I want to attack Oscar Christensen's life total? Because let's be honest, Oscar at 8, this might be lethal. Stráský's counting this really fast, but I don't think there's actually a need for much to make this lethal damage.
So check this out. We're going to see the Wicked Wolf tapped thanks to Gadwick, right? That's going to tap down the Wicked Wolf. A second Oko actually threatening to elk something else, push through even more damage here. Or maybe just as a sort of creeping or crippling chill type effect to tap down that Wicked Wolf.
Actually, between Nissa, who shakes the world, and Gilded Goose becoming an elk, that's going to spell the end of the tournament for Oscar
Look at all these
this
3/3s
turn.
getting in there. Gadwick, the Wizened MVP, and attacks with all of these elks and the forest as well. A remarkable victory for this young Czech superstar. He is back on the map and loving life. Congratulations to Ondřej Stráský, a well-deserved and very, very inventive win there.
That was an impressive game to watch. Ondřej started with just 3 Gilded Goose and 4 lands, and eventually, and it was that turn with the Aether Gust on Vraska. That changed everything.
Yeah, a key moment in that game.
Because not just that, Ondřej skipped Oko on turn 2, saw the Vraska, got it. Christensen had to put it on the bottom. Oko's free to run. Nissa off the top, and Gadwick to finish it off.
Absolutely incredible sequence of cards there for Stráský, and the way that he was able to very, very quickly close out the game meant that Christensen couldn't really get his foot back in that door as it closed. So well done indeed. Hats off to Ondřej Stráský, and I'm very excited that he'll be facing one of these players in a Mythic Championship final. It'll be good to see his handsome face there at the end of Sunday. So let's see who we'll be up against. It's going to be either Paulo Vitor Rosa, the MPL superstar from Brazil, or Sebastian Pozzo, the up-and-comer from Argentina. And right now these players tied at 1-1 and already well into game number 3.
Yeah, with Pozzo seemingly out of resources, it looks like Pozzo's hand is empty. Probably, I mean, as we follow, Paulo Vitor Damo de Rosa has so many resources in hand, and unfortunately, with this Oko Fief of Crowns being attacked by Wicked Wolf, it's either the Goose or the Oko going away. This is a really hard spot for Sebastian Pozzo. He really needs a Hydroid Krasis off the top to even stay in this game.
So at the moment, we're on all-wolf beatdown here, Howling at the Moon, and Pozzo finds a land off the top. That's a real stinker for him. And look at what Damo de Rosa still got waiting. Still had all these. Talk about a handful of gas, including our old mate Gadwick the Wizard as well.
Drew the land off the top, cast Nissa who shakes the world, deal a ton of damage
yeah,
potentially.
We're getting for 11 here. This is a huge attack. Pozzo on 20, but now all of a sudden his life total under siege in a major way.
And a lot of players in this spot would just go, you know what, I'm going to win the long game. So I'm not going to attack just with the land because that's free, but I'm not going to attack. I'm going to take my time. But Paulo, by attacking, just opens up more options down the line. And there's not really much that Pozzo can do to punish Paulo, even with the right card. And here we're going to see Gadwick draw all the cards.
So many cards once again. Gadwick really has been a powerhouse so far. And I think once again he's ready to work his magic, draw a stack of cards for Damo de Rosa. Having a think about exactly how many he wants to draw here. I think there'll be a Nissa untap at some stage as well, because Damo de Rosa now in a very enviable position. Not only is he drawing ahead so far in cards, he's also not letting up on the pressure.
Yeah, just deal the damage, draw the cards, you will eventually get there. The only thing I believe Paulo is considering here is just the best setup, because Paulo has access to Aether Gust in hand and would ideally like to have that as an option.
So, here's Gadwick the Wizard. Looks like X is going to equal 4. Still with the Nissa activation ready to go, so 4 cards off the top. Wicked Wolf, Forest, another Nissa, and a Brazen Borrower. The new pickup here for Damo de Rosa.
What? Okay, that's...
Wicked Wolf picking up another counter there. That's...
What are we missing?
Yeah, that's confusing. I'm not 100% sure what that counter
Oh, it was supposed to be for Nissa.
Oh,
It's
sure.
But
They put it on the wrong green permanent, and Pozzo's like, you know what, whatever, you got me. You absolutely got me. You done me real good here, Paulo, and so we're going to go to game number 4, potentially the last game of this semi-final between Paulo Vitor Damo de Rosa and Sebastian Pozzo, 2 South American superstars there, and we're going to find out which one will face down Ondřej Stráský, the young man from the Czech Republic there in our final. We've already seen the fact that we've played post-board games with both of these Oko decks already, but maybe we can talk about some of the cards that really have a major impact in games 3 through 5. I mean, Gadwick the Wizard, that's the headline act here for sure.
We saw it in the game with Ondřej Stráský. We saw it lock as well for Paulo Vitor Damo de Rosa. The option, it's not just the option to draw a lot of cards, it's the fact that it can't be Aether Gusted. And in these Simic Food mirrors, having that one copy that you can get through once upon a time that you can get to, very important. One thing that I found interesting about the post-board games, way more aggressive. Normally post-board games, things slow down.
Yeah.
You take your time.
Exactly.
We saw unbridled aggression in both of those games.
We've seen it throughout all of Sunday, and I imagine we're going to see it again. But before that, we've got to take a quick break, my friends. We're going to get things set up for the last, or potentially the last game of this semi-final here from Mythic Championship 6. In the meantime, stay with us. We'll see you very soon.
We've got Seth Manfield here for a pack 1, pick 1 from Throne of Eldraine. Crack that pack, Seth.
Let me see if I can open this up. Yep. All right.
All right, as you lay these cards out, let me know if anything is catching your eye.
Well, you didn't say please, but I'll go ahead.
He got me. He got me. That card's name's got to be one of the best of all time in Magic. It's so good.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun counterspell for sure. So we've got our commons here.
All right, we've got some good stuff. Outmuscle, Ardenvale Tactician. You mentioned didn't say please. What's going on over here? Ooh, we've got a Mythic Outlaws Mermaid.
So yeah, this is an interesting pack. I'm not really sure what to take. Oh yeah, well.
Oh wait, this busted Mythic right here. This card's super fun to play with too, isn't it?
To play with, but
Yes.
not to play against,
No.
because I mean you basically can't beat it if you play it on turn 4 and you just make an army of creatures. I mean it's a pretty busted card. Obviously it's a 2-color card, so you have to be Boros to take advantage of it. But like such a good card. I'm just taking it. The unfortunate part about this booster is like the next best card might just be another red-white card.
Yeah.
So you might be putting the person next to you into Boros. So like if this wasn't in the pack, I might just take the Inspiring Veteran as my other pick. But
Do you like it better than an Ardenvale Tactician?
you know, that's actually a pretty close pick. I think Outmuscle, Tactician, Inspiring Veteran are the other cards that I would. I think I'd take Outmuscle as the next pick. So like maybe this isn't like right next to my opponent, but or next to the person next to me. But yeah, pretty sweet pack. Joust is kind of nice as a way to removal spell, get rid of other knights. It's funny because like there's a bunch of good cards that are like go in the Boros deck. Because once you take a Boros card, you're most likely going to be red-white aggro knights. Like if you're red-white,
you're not playing aggro knight control here.
Yeah, I mean, and then it's kind of hard to have a 3-color deck. So super powerful card, and I'm just gonna almost certainly force it and just play it.
All right, let's see if we can be the merry men after all by taking Outlaws Merrymen.
Welcome back to live coverage of Mythic Championship VI. My name's Riley Knight, joined by Eduardo Sajgalic, and down in the feature match area, Paulo, Vitor, Damo, Rosa facing off against Sebastian Pozzo. Damo, Rosa will be on the draw, but playing for the match after having picked up a Game 4 victory. And, Game 3 victory. And here are some of the cards that we're expecting to have a bit of an impact post-board as the players have adjusted their starting 60s. We've already seen Gandwick the Wizened do some work. Eduardo, any other cards that stand out to you here?
For me, Voracious Hydra being able to fight the mana creatures. And then Veil of Summer again in the Simic mirror, not as important as it was against the Sultai Food decks because the number of cards it stops is much smaller, so it typically is a card you won't see all 4 come in, maybe 1, maybe 2, depending on trickery. A card that we'll see here in Paulo's deck and in Pozzo is Mystical Dispute. A card that, in my view, is much better on the draw than on the play because you're capable of preventing your turn 2 Oko. Allows you to snipe that turn 2 Oko on the draw, as you mentioned. It's also in the sideboard of Sebastian Pozzo. In broad terms, these sideboards are very, very similar. Small differences like Gadwick versus Kral Harpooner. These cards are going to have something of an impact, but once again, my friends, the core 20 card or 24 card, core cards of these decks is what determines how these games go, with decisions made early in the game mattering and echoing throughout the games they progress. And look at this, Pozzo off to the races. Turn 1 Goose, that's exactly what he wants. Once upon a time now, for Damo, Rosa finds a Hydroid Krasis. His hand isn't quite as explosive with no turn 1 Goose. I bet he was probably maybe looking for a Goose there, but without one, he'll just have to settle with the Forest Go. If I'm in Pozzo's seat and I see Hydroid Krasis, I will put Paulo on being able to get 4 mana by turn free almost every single time. That's why you see Oko Fief of Crowns right away. He knows that Paulo is trying to just ramp up, and a way to stop that is to put the pressure. Obviously, you just play it on turn 2, but it means if you want it to be more passive, it would very much be a mistake. So Oko comes down, thanks to the Gilded Goose eating up a food there, and creates another food straight away, so very much protecting the status quo. But Oko, large and in charge on 6 loyalty. Damo, Rosa with a slower start, just a Paradise Druid for him on turn 2. Back to Pozzo now, whose hand looks, well, pretty decent. Double Paradise Druid and a Wicked Wolf to take care of business in the later turns. But the most important card at the moment on the battlefield, that Oko. I really like this. I really, really, really like this play from Pozzo. Pozzo could develop a little bit of mana, try to make a food, but when your opponent takes Hydroid Krasis off on a once upon a time, they're not trying to set up. They've got everything they need. You need to put pressure because in Pozzo's situation, you are not beating that Krasis in the long game. Pozzo very much understands that he's on the back foot if he stays back, so he has to be the aggressor. And this is going to pan out because while this goose goes away, there's a Wicked Wolf in Sebastian Pozzo's hand, and it can either snipe that Paradise Druid or the Wolf. And actually, with an Oko Plus activation, you could get that Paradise Druid to not produce mana anymore and put Paulo behind. There's a lot of options here for Pozzo, but they're all about aggression.
This is what we've talked about. These decisions matter. This is not just slamming cards against each other. There are deep and tangled webs that need to be sort of pulled apart here by the players in the feature match area. So let's find out the angle that Pozzo takes. Here's the Wicked Wolf.
It's obviously much better to actually get the Paradise Druid and Elk the Wolf anyways, rather than the reverse of what I said. But yes, here, make a food, prepare for an attack potentially next turn. But the most important part, attack.
Get in there. No attacks really available for Paulo Vitor Damo Rosa next turn into that Wicked Wolf, so he's happy to trade, but his board is looking pitiful in the face of what Pozzo's working with, and it's not getting much better for him either. Only a Wicked Wolf in hand, which doesn't do a huge amount on this board at all. Can't go after the opposing Wicked Wolf at all, so there's just a Krasis for 2. Oh, Krasis for...
Two.
This
one card.
One card. Oh my goodness, this is very, very bad here for PV. Poor PV is really not having it come together.
But that's why, while we see a Krull Harpooner being drawn, it was important for Sebastian Pozzo to put pressure, because otherwise the Krasis would be free to be X equals 4 and be large and in charge. Paulo had in hand a Nissa who shakes the world, and that's not the combo we want to face. So good on Sebastian to do essentially this pressure. Probably should have played the Wicked Wolf post-combat, I would argue, since the Druid was tapped, just to give PV a little less info.
But as it was,
it happened.
Damo
It's all
Rosa
good.
sniffed it out, blocked, but still Pozzo in a commanding position here.
If I was in Pozzo's seat, I'd just be wondering, what's the most aggressive play I could do this turn?
What's the maximum amount of pressure?
And I think it's Krull Harpooner, clear that Krasis, play Paradise Druid, and get in there.
Love it. Love it.
I love it too. This is great.
All offense, no defense. Pozzo now continues to play out his hand. He's actually hell-bent. And Damo Rosa needs something very special. He's on 10 life. He's facing down 4 attackers that are all at least decently sized. And of course, that Oko, which has gone completely uncontested. A Nissa here is an option, but it's not going to be able to be defended very well.
And Paulo really only has access to 1 spell this turn because there isn't a breeding pool in play. The option of going something like Nissa who shakes the world plus Petit Fef is not available. There is only 2 blue mana available. So again, you can't Brazen Borrow and cast it. And yeah, it's 1 spell this turn. It better matter for Paulo, but whatever spell it is, it's what allows you to tide you into that Hydroid Krasis. Because Paulo's the one with the resources in hand, Pozzo's the one with the resources on the board, and generally that favors a player with the resources on the board, but Pozzo really needs to lock the game down. A long game does not favor him at all in this position. Hopefully, if you're a Pozzo fan, top deck something very important.
Here's the Wicked Wolf, going to go after the Paradise Druid and eat that up for its tea.
Absolutely makes sense. You remove pressure off the board while still having a free to block, making it act as a 2-for-1.
Not such a great draw there for Pozzo, just a forest, but he's still miles ahead here with this board presence that he's cooked up. And let's see what his next move is.
Worth pointing out, there's no food. You can take that Wicked Wolf by swapping it for a Paradise Druid, but that would give Paulo access to a Paradise Druid. Maybe not something you want to do. With Pozzo drawing a land, whatever puts pressure is important, but it might be at a great cost.
Yeah, he can't really make good attacks. The Wicked Wolf can get in there here now that Pozzo has made a food token. But apart from that, the Elk is just going to trade with... Hey, but maybe that's not bad. Like, you're still pressuring Paulo. You're still putting the pressure on here. As it is just the Wicked Wolf getting in. That is just more or less a free attack, and it's going to get through unhindered. Damo Rosa down to 7. Back to the Brazilian now. Once upon a time off the top, 6 mana. Is this going to be the sweet spot for that Hydroid Krasis?
Paulo is just considering if Nissa, who shakes the world, is good enough, and in this position can't really play around anything. So runs the Nissa. There might be counter magic in Pozzo's hand, but it doesn't matter. Paulo is a little too behind for that on the board. But if Paulo gets to attack with a Nissa, who shakes the world, Pozzo is almost assuredly out of this game.
So Damo de Rosa wakes up the forest.
And
Representing interaction with that island, although he doesn't have any other than that Brazen Borrower.
Brazen Borrower can be pretty relevant because it means that kind of no attack on Nissa or Paulo will succeed as a result. As for Pozzo, Hydroid Krasis, a really powerful draw, but unfortunately maybe a turn late. Last turn it would have been very powerful because it would have been an additional threat. But now, with Pozzo playing catch-up, it might be a problem because Paulo, while Pozzo can draw 2 cards, Paulo is going to be able to draw a wealth more and or interact at the same time.
Let's see what's going to happen here with Oko. In hand for Pozzo, you may have seen very quickly there, Forest and a Hydroid Krasis. So what's Oko up to? Going downstairs now, swapping a food for a forest.
Right, Paulo obviously tapping the forest. There was an option there to cast Brazen Borrower in order to bounce the food token and prevent this exchange. But at that point, you kind of tap out anyways, and you might be in danger because there are quite a few creatures. So even something like an Aether Gust would mean the end of the game for Paulo. So while Paulo, with full information, might have done Brazen Borrower on that in that spot,
I don't think it prevents the exchange.
you still need both permanents in play normally for the
No,
exchange.
I don't think so, because there's still one legal target for the ability. Or do you need
If
both?
it says specifically exchange, I believe you
then
need to
both.
exchange.
Okay,
You're not
sure.
giving
Right,
anything
right,
yet.
right, right. If it specifically says exchange, then you need to do it. Okay, sure.
Right.
Sure.
It's not
It's
swap-
different to like 2 target permanents.
It's not change the
Yes.
controller of
Okay,
2 target
right,
permanents.
I understand.
Right.
All right.
Unless something changed, which could happen.
So
But
instead now we see the Brazen Borrower, a bit of petty theft going after that elk, the food token that was turned into an elk. And now Pozzo, what's his next move here?
Well, let's draw some cards and make a threat. But the fun part here is by trading the food, Pozzo can't really attack. That Wicked Wolf on Paulo's side is now pretty much invincible, but not Sebastian's.
Back to Damo de Rosa.
And we have it for De Rosa with Nissa, who shakes the world, and Hydroid Krasis. Let's count the cards. We can draw 2, 4, 6, 8. Well, we can make it an 8-8. We can draw 4 cards.
That is a lot of mana to dump into a Hydroid Krasis. That is the 1-2 punch we've come to love with this combination of cards, Nissa and Hydroid Krasis. They go together like 2 foods that taste really good together.
But Paulo may not want to go for maximum here because Pozzo just drew a bunch of cards and has a 5/5 flyer in play. So Paulo here might be trying to figure out how much I actually want to draw in order to maximize my chances of also having an interactive spell. I think X equals 6 to me makes sense because it blocks the Hydroid Krasis natively. At 4, well, there's not much they can do, but oh, Petty Theft and Aether Gust, tons of interaction for Paulo, and that's what Paulo needed. Paulo has the resources, and by having that cheap interaction, should be able to pull ahead.
So Damo de Rosa now has turned this match or this game on its head here with Pozzo getting out of the gates like a greyhound. But for Paulo Vitor Damo de Rosa, he's done a great job of turning this one around. Back to Pozzo now. This Hydroid Krasis dominating the battlefield in addition to its second in command, the Nissa.
That was a Crawl Harpooner. And we have exactly 3 creatures in the graveyard.
So let's see how Pozzo is going to play this one out. In hand for him, a Nissa and a Crawl Harpooner. He's got a couple of options, but again, let's not forget, Damo de Rosa has got that Aether Gust in hand. He's got the Brazen Borrower. Can't be cast this turn, but he's still got plenty of options.
Yeah, have access to Petty Theft, have access to Aether Gust. Pozzo, I think, is going to lead out with Nissa because it's the less relevant spell out of Nissa and Crawl Harpooner.
Which is unbelievable, right? Like, you just snap off the Aether Gust straight away, get rid of that Nissa. You're not having that. But maybe Damo de Rosa is going to sniff it out.
This is actually a really interesting spot because, wow, then this is actually the less relevant card here. A Crawl Harpooner would get rid of this Hydroid Crisis on Paulo's side, and that would free an attack from Sebastian Pozzo.
So is Damo de Rosa going to take the bait? He's not. He is not, and I tell you what, that is the mark of a master. He lets this enormously threatening card come down. He leaves the Ether Gust because he knows he's got to play around a Crawl Harpooner, and Pozzo, who has just gone fishing for the weekend, has come home empty-handed.
And now Pozzo's like, well, I didn't get countered. I mean, I'm going to
do
play
it.
this Harpooner.
Got to go for it. Here's the Crawl Harpooner, and we're going to see the fastest Ether Gust in the history of all time here, as, of course, Damo de Rosa is going to protect his copy of Hydroid Crisis from that ability here.
And that means now that Pozzo's Nissa is in a potentially dangerous situation with that Hydroid Crisis.
I did promise the fastest Ether Gust in the history of all time. I may have missed the mark a little bit with that one, but still.
And the reason for that is cost. So one reason that Paulo did not counter Nissa was opportunity cost. Essentially, Paulo does not want to lose the game, as many top players
Are you sure? We're saying a lot of sweeping generalizations here. Wow.
Yeah. But in a spot like this, also, Paulo wants that forest untap, and to cast Ether Gust is a creature out. So the sides here, though, this is too much. If Crawl Harpooner resolves and that Crisis gets to come in, that's probably too much damage.
Well, he loses the creature either way, right? Because he either loses the Harpooner or he loses the forest. And in this case, as a blocker, I should say. And in this case, I think, yeah, he needs to keep that 6/6 around. It's facing off against the Wicked Wolf. It's facing off against the Hydroid Crisis.
It's more because of the multiples of free. Paulo's at 10 life, so a Crisis coming through, 5/5 Crisis coming through for damage would mean that only any 2 creatures on Pozzo's side would be lethal damage, whereas by Crisis being stopped, that means that Pozzo has to get through with 4 creatures, which is a much taller ask.
So Damo de Rosa, he is desperately digging in, trying to get to that next untapped step where Brazen Borrower and Once Upon a Time are going to pull him further ahead. He can start to play an interactive game at instant speed here. And what is Pozzo considering here?
He was looking at the turn because he's trying to consider what can happen. One thing here is that if Pozzo offers an exchange with Oko, say with a tapped Paradise Druid, then Wicked Wolf needs the food in order to not be exchanged. No matter what, Sebastian Pozzo can get rid of that Wicked Wolf. At that point, the Crisis gets blocked by the Hydroid Crisis, and that leaves 4 creatures coming through for lethal damage. I think Sebastian Pozzo can take this one.
So,
but doing an Elk also works because with Hydroid Crisis dealing 5 damage, 2 creatures come through. This also works.
All right, so Pozzo seems to have stitched together a lethal attack here after that Ether Gust took care of the Crawl Harpooner, but Pozzo goes after the Nissa.
I think it was lethal, right? Because it would be 5 damage to Paulo since there's no flyers, and then the other 2 creatures would get through. There's no untapped mana.
And he can attack with the 2 3/3s and the 2/1s. Oh, tragedy for Pozzo. He missed onboard lethal. Oh, no. Heartbreaking stuff for him right now. Ignorance is bliss as well. Paulo getting away with murder. It's not the first time that he's been the beneficiary of a situation like this in the feature match of a semi-final at a Mythic Championship.
Why is it against 2 of my friends is another question.
Oh, the curse of Saj Gallic. Oh, dearie me. Well, in any case, we move on now. Damo de Rosa playing a Once Upon a Time there. Nissa handily doubling that forest mana production.
And pretty much doubling into another forest since the other 2 cards are not takeable.
All right. So the rest of them go below decks. A land for PV. And he's got another Once Upon a Time in hand, so he may just want to fire that one off and see what he can find.
By the way, Pozzo did make the Hydroid Crisis an Elk because the thought process was, I want to protect my Nissa, and that way I remove a flyer. So that was why, although lethal was available, Sebastian's thought process was so based on the board. Right.
Yeah,
it was so based on the board that was the decision-making process.
And this is I think, emblematic of this standard format. You said, we talked about this all weekend. Coming into this format, life total's largely irrelevant. Hand size is often irrelevant as well. It's about control of the board. And Pozzo was playing to the board. He wanted to wrest control of the battlefield back from PV, and that explains that slight stumble there. And now Damo de Rosa, we've seen him punish opponents in the past for doing stuff like this, and I wonder, is he going to do it again? In comes the 9-9 Hydroid Krasis Elk.
That's getting blocked by something. Just what is the question? If it does attack, like, it's obviously not Pozzo that's getting attacked. It's one of the Planeswalkers, and whatever Planeswalkers attack probably will see a chump block from most likely Paradise Druid.
Brazen Burrow, Wicked Wolf in hand here for PV. He's having to have a good old think about how he wants to navigate this turn.
This is one of the rare windows to get rid of Wicked Wolf in play. Essentially, Pozzo with Oko Fief of Crowns is capable of generating food every turn, which would protect Wicked Wolf. That said, Pozzo has been more interested in turning permanents into Elks with Oko. So how relevant is Wicked Wolf in this spot is actually a good question.
So Wicked Wolf on Wicked Wolf here, but I think we'll see Damo de Rosa sacrifice the food, make it indestructible.
It may actually just be a straight-up trade. That was what Paulo was considering, because Paulo's up a Wicked Wolf here, but it means that the Wicked Wolf in play might, if it had to block, would just die. But I think it makes sense here anyways to trade the food. Paulo was probably considering life total.
And there is a new alpha in town with that 4-4 Wicked Wolf. So the attacks from Damo de Rosa now, free to rumble with these 3-3 lands, in addition to that 9-9 Elk, the Hydroid Krasis there, and as well as this other Wicked Wolf here. So an all-out attack from Damo de Rosa. Once again, all offense, no defense. Maybe some partial defense here.
The thing with Sebastian at 22, any attack to Sebastian would just happily take. So clearly these are going towards Planeswalkers. And remember, Petty Theft is non-land permanents. It cannot return one of these creature forests.
Yes.
But yeah, Paulo is probably quite happy to trade with Sebastian's lands. And the thing is, you kind of have to accept the exchange because of the vigilance on the lands. There's not much you can do. The only reason really to not do so is doing something like turning one of the lands into an Elk, and then it would be a 6-6.
So Pozzo now facing down an attack from 2 Awakened Forests in addition to the 9-9 X-Hydroid Krasis. And I think it looks like we're just going to have blocks across the board here. So block, block, block. That Wicked Wolf not coming in. Damo de Rosa floats some mana, and here is Petty Theft on the Nissa. That's going to hamstring Pozzo's mana. Let's remind ourselves, he doesn't have anything of relevance in hand, only a Brazen Borrower. Oh, sorry, only a Breeding Pool, I should say, and now that Nissa.
Taps both forests because there's floating mana to play for potential Mystical Dispute.
And one of those forests, of course, nicked by the Oko previously. And so a tidy little turn from Damo de Rosa, who is now F6'd. So what can Pozzo do to take advantage of this?
Well, then this is in hand. I mean, there was a line it was possible for Pozzo to win this turn with the right top deck. That didn't happen. But if Pozzo had rip off the top something like a Brazen Borrower, it would have been possible for Pozzo to turn the Krasis into an Elk, and then play Nissa, and then a Breeding Pool attacks, taps for mana. And not the case. Could have happened. That said here, at least Sebastian Pozzo can get rid of this Nissa who shakes the world. However, protecting this Oko Fief of Crowns is going to be extremely difficult, as is going to be protecting his own Nissa who shakes the world.
So Pozzo, 2 lands, Nissa in hand, 5 mana. There is Nissa who shakes the world.
Pozzo could make a 6-6 land here, which is a pretty unusual play. But wouldn't make sense here, since that would present 11 damage. That would present more damage with Paulo at 10. That's actually a pretty attractive option.
Vitor Damo de Rosa now needs an answer to the Hydroid Krasis. So let's see. Forest is made into a creature, and then into an Elk. Jeez, a real grand tour here for Pozzo. Now this requires a block. Otherwise, it's a lethal attack. Damo de Rosa's life total is halved. He's down to 5, facing down a lethal Hydroid Krasis next turn. He can hold off the 6-6 with a 9-9 of his own, but off the top, I think that was just a Breeding Pool. That's not a good draw for Damo de Rosa here.
And Paulo's not out of this yet. While the Hydroid Krasis has trample, Brazen Borrowers can at least essentially gain Paulo 1 life. But if Paulo's able to cast both, then it would have been possible for Paulo to essentially trade with the Krasis.
So Brazen Borrower main phase in order to get full value out of Nissa untapping.
And that's why you see this sequence.
I'm not sure that did he add a loyalty counter to his Nissa just now? He may have left it on 3. There we go. Okay, so he caught it. Okay, so there's the attack. Nissa goes down. Back to Pozzo now.
And now Paulo has enough defense here.
He also can cast that second Brazen Borrower should things go awry in that regard. But again, only being able to block for 1 life.
Right, but if Pozzo doesn't attack with a 6/6 Elk, then you would be able to do that. But Nissa off the top here, with Paulo at 5, and at least 4 damage from this Hydroid Krasis.
Is that going to be enough here?
I believe so, because that will be 4 damage plus free from one of the lands. I think that's it. Okay.
All right, so Pozzo pushing through for what may be a lethal attack, a reprieve for him. And Paulo Vitor Damo de Rosa crunches the numbers, and oh my goodness me, a very, very, very tense game there. But Pozzo managing, after having sailed very close to the wind indeed, pulls it back under control. And I have to say, he should consider himself to be have dealt with very leniently indeed. It's not very often, my friends, that you can afford to make a misstep against a player of PV's character and expect to get away with it. But ultimately, the card's falling the way of Sebastian Pozzo. We're going to take a quick break, my friends. We'll be back for the very last game of the semi-final. So stick with us. We'll find out who's going to meet Ondřej Stráský in the finals after this.
Hey, I found William Huey Jensen here to crack a pack of Throne of Eldraine, so let's get to it. What's your favorite color pair in this set? Or just color, because you can draft monocolor decks.
My favorite color is Oko.
Okay, great. Perfect answer, and that's what we're hoping to open. Well, we didn't get there, but we did open a Return of the Wild Speaker here at our rare slot.
I haven't had a chance to play with that card a ton. I don't know. Looks like I'm definitely taking a green card here. The pack is also very heavy green. I think I might just go ahead and take Edgewall Innkeeper.
Yeah.
But with the caveat that I haven't played this card a lot. It's been okay for me, but sometimes not great. So I'm definitely taking the green card. It's a little bit rough because all the other 2 best cards are green, so the people to our left might go into green. But maybe somebody first picks a blue card and takes the Improbable Alliance. But I think I'll go with the Innkeeper on this one.
Okay, why do you like Edgewall Innkeeper? It's just a 1/1 for 1.
It's just a 1/1, but if you start your draft with it, you can build around it. You can try to take a lot of adventure cards. A 1/1 for 1 that can snowball enough advantage to effectively run away with the game. Really powerful.
So we've got Edgewall Innkeeper. Do you have your fingers crossed for anything else coming up in the specific packs? Just in the next pack, just adventure generally?
Basically, yeah. After that, you know, just prioritize adventure cards a little higher. Like, I'm not going to take Adventure Giant Growth over Bacon to a Pie or something, but certainly as a tiebreaker, take some adventure cards. Make sure you get a few. Certain cards go up in value, like the Rose Thorn Acolyte and cards like that. So just make sure to get some of those. Maybe, fingers crossed, pack 2 or pack 3, you can get another Innkeeper, and then you can have sort of a ridiculous deck.
Or Oko.
Or Oko.
Right?
Yeah.
We're still looking for that Oko, but oh well, we'll do it. Edgewall Innkeeper is still a pretty good pack 1, pick 1.
And welcome back to the booth here at Mythic Championship VI. My name's Riley Knight. His name is Eduardo Sage-Gallic, and we're going to head down to the feature match area to find out our winner of the semi-final between Paulo Vitor Damo de Rosa and Sebastian Pozzo. The Czech superstar Ondřej Stráský has already secured himself a berth in our final. And the only thing that remains, Eduardo, is to find out who he will be up against. Let's have a look at the decks that these players are playing with, starting off with Paulo Vitor Damo de Rosa.
Right, Paulo playing Simic Food, a deck that we've seen and re-seen, seen again. The big thing, a kind of semi-standard list. The 2 mass manipulation, the talk of the tournament were the food mirrors. A lot of people wanted to go over the top. It's hard to top off over mass manipulation. Compared to the other Simic Food decks, though, no creature lands, no mobilized districts hiding in the mana base.
Let's have a quick look at the sideboard here for Damo de Rosa as well. We've already seen the impact of cards like Veil of Summer, Mystical Dispute, and of course the headline act Gadwick the Wizened as a one-of out of the sideboard of Damo de Rosa. So keep an eye out for cards like that as we head into game number 5. We move over now and look at Pozzo's list. Again, a very similar food deck from Pozzo, a core 24 or so cards, but then a little bit of a different approach when it comes to interaction. 4 Ether Gust, 4 Brazen Borrower, 0 Mass Manipulation.
And 2 Mobilized District. We are attacking, and I've been loving it.
Here's the sideboard for Pozzo. We've already seen Kral Harpooner was brought in addition to some of that interaction. So let's see how it pans out as we head down to the feature match area between these two players. One last game before we get to our final. That very, very shiny piece of hardware is what's at stake, in addition to about 50,000 reasons to smile for the winner.
And 1 World Championship seat.
Absolutely. There is a lot on the line today.
The World Championship seat, considering how well these 2 players have been doing this season, might actually go to someone else. If one of these players wins, it liberates a World Championship seat for the next person in line.
Right.
So you have some MPL fans rooting for Paulo and the ROW rooting for Pozzo.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, we'll see how things shake out. I mean, it's going to be very interesting. I have to say, I get lost amongst all the numbers. I just wait for someone who's smarter than me to tell me how it's going to go. But any way you slice it, Worlds is going to be a very interesting affair when we get to it. But right now, it is all about this semi-final between PVDDR and SP. Well, that's not quite as an impressive a set of initials, but that's quite an impressive opening hand.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the power of Once Upon a Time. You could keep a hand that looks like absolute garbage if you want to.
All right, I like that. Shooting from the hip, Eduardo Sajgalik, Volcanic takes with him. But no, look, you're right. The card Once Upon a Time, it expands the range of keepable hands enormously. One lander with Once Upon a Time, you'll probably hit a second land. Don't even worry about it. A bit light on action, you'll probably find it with Once Upon a Time. Need some early plays, Edgewall Innkeeper, need a goose, you'll probably find it with Once Upon a Time. Easy game.
Right. And Pozzo can wait 2 turns. There's no need to fire it off on turn 1 since Pozzo is interested in a land, not necessarily a Gilded Goose. I want to point out, though, we've seen a lot of aggression in these post-board games, and it's a really weird principle I want to talk about while they gear up. The notion of being aggressive as a method of card advantage, as we see PV take another mulligan.
Mulligan to 5 here for the Brazilian. That's not the way you want to start.
But if you rewatch games 3 and 4, the reason that you've seen the players be so aggressive is that once the life totals dwindle low enough, then the options reduce. Then you have to make blocks you don't want to. You can't get as much value from a Hydroid Crisis. So the aggression is a way to actually disrupt and remove cards and options from your opponent.
We've talked a lot this weekend, Eduardo, about board presence and board domination being key, especially in these food mirrors. And I think that has panned out based on the way that these games have gone. The person who can exercise the most control over the board, dominate it with their creatures and planeswalkers, generally will end up winning. We've seen formats where it's most important to get out of the gates quickly. We've seen formats where it's important to have a late game engine that is going to drive you forward to victory. But now more than ever, playing to the board is critical.
And looking at this hand from Paulo, he's wondering which 2 cards at the bottom, but we at least see Gilded Goose, Paradise Druid, and Wicked Wolf. If Paulo keeps that Gilded Goose, though, that is a juicy, juicy target for Kral Harpooner.
Yeah, one of the reasons we see it in these post-sideboard games, not only that it can maybe contest a late-game Hydroid Crisis, but also because it can just pick off a goose and still live to tell the tale.
And when you're short on resources like Paulo's going to be, because Paulo on the play will be down 2 to 3 cards per turn compared to Pozzo. That means a lot less options, but that's a very powerful hand. I wouldn't be surprised to see this Island Once Upon a Time, because I'm not sure what Once Upon a Time would want to find. You already kind of have what you want.
I mean, it's a great 7 and it's a decent 5, about as good as you can hope for here. So PV, he's going to bin that Island, he's going to bin that Once Upon a Time, and we are off to the races for game number 5 here between Paulo Vitor Damo de Rosa and Sebastian Pozzo, 2 South American superstars going at it hammer and tongs here at Mythic Championship 6. My name's Riley Knight. Eduardo Sajgalik is in the booth with me, and it's our great pleasure to bring you live coverage of this event. Thanks so much for sticking with us throughout the weekend. Plenty more action to come, and it's all going to come down to who wins this game. They'll be facing Ondřej Stráský in the final. And the winner of that game, of course, $50,000 dues and an invitation to Worlds. This is high stakes magic.
By the way, we see here the Once Upon a Time right away because Pozzo wanted that untapped blue source just in case of a turn to Oko.
So, the Guso into the Druido
is going to face a Harpoono.
And it's back to Pozzo for the Harpoono. PV has done a decent job of getting mana out early, and he's got some good follow-ups too, Gadwick and Wicked Wolf. But look at Pozzo's hand. An embarrassment of riches for him. My goodness, are you kidding me?
And Pozzo here has to play the Harpooner. There wasn't enough mana for Mystical Dispute into something like, in case PV drew Nissa, and that would be one of the ways PV can win. This is not the best exchange for Pozzo, and it's quite a bit of pressure, but I mean, when you look at your options, and that Aether Gust is actually an interesting pickup. Pozzo really wants to just develop mana. Pozzo, by far, will be the control player this game.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I was going to say. He wants to slow down and dictate the pace of play. He wants this game to go long so he can leverage the powerful cards in his hand. You see the business that he's got ready to go. But Damo de Rosa, he's got a 2-1, he's got a 4-4, and he's ready to rumble. So it's up to Pozzo to find an answer.
And here the question from Pozzo is, do I get rid of this Paradise Druid now? PV does not have that much mana and only has 1 card. So PV's either short on mana and or on frets. Getting rid of Paradise Druid is probably permanent. PV could redraw it, but that essentially gets Pozzo.
That puts him a long way behind redrawing a mana dork like that.
While Wicked Wolf gives PV the option to be right, Paradise Druid doesn't really.
So, Aether Gust main phase on the Wicked Wolf. Let's see what Damo de Rosa does with that. He's going to put it below decks. I like this call. Draws a land off the top potentially, and we might have a big old Gadwick. No, it's a Paradise Druid once again here.
And that's a super unfortunate draw for PV because that incentivizes, of course, playing the Paradise Druid. You don't want to play Gadwick for 1. But Pozzo's going to untap, play probably an Oko here since attacking with Paradise Druid. Still okay since at that point you have Wicked Wolf in hand. But the worst part about all this is Pozzo has access to Mystical Dispute. But PV draws Nissa off the top.
Perfect draw here, playing around that Mystical Dispute that Pozzo has left up. The Gadwick would have eaten it so hard his teeth would have fallen out. But Nissa going after the Oko with that 3-3 island is putting on real pressure for Sebastian Pozzo. Let's see what the Argentinian can get done this turn.
Pozzo really wanted a land this turn. A land would have allowed a play like Wicked Wolf plus having Mystical Dispute mana up, being able to elk the food, put pressure on this, like develop a board presence. But now you have to make that choice. And if Pozzo decides to not keep Mystical Dispute up, that's going to be at Gadwick for a ton of cards, and that's going to be PV back into this game.
That's right. I mean, really, Pozzo here, this is the key turn. This is the turn that will decide his fate. As he elks the food, goes after Nissa, will he leave up this Mystical Dispute for Gadwick, or is PV going to have a hope? And yes, there it is, a Stone Rain effect killing that Paradise Druid now, but Gadwick the Wizened is going to draw PV a stack of cards here, especially in conjunction with Nissa.
That's going to be 4 cards. And PV is going to be really back in this game. But if PV does not play Gadwick this turn, it's going to be a disaster.
Because that Mystical Dispute in future turns is going to be so easy for Pozzo to hold up. He's playing to the board. This is what you want to do in situations like this. But I tell you what, if there is a man who can puzzle out the best line to take in this situation, it is Paulo, Vitor, Damo de Rosa. He's going to figure it out. He's going to know what he's got to do. Take advantage of Pozzo being tapped out.
It's actually, and PV is just considering other lines, like do I attack? Because I think this has to be the turn for Gadwick. As far as I'm concerned, it's just too many cards. It's just the right, wow.
All right, so goes after the Oko here.
Wow.
Threatening, well, offering the trade with the Wicked Wolf.
Oh my, that attack. That attack is, wow. Like, PV does not want this island to go.
Now, what level is PV on here?
This is like a level 4 or 5 play. It's ultra dangerous. If Pozzo blocks here, Pozzo will be quite a bit ahead because that means that Pozzo can untap with Mystical Dispute and stop Gadwick.
He's not going to block. He's got away with it. He's got away with it, my friend. Someone call the police. Someone is getting away with murder here. Damo de Rosa has absolutely taken Pozzo for a ride. Here is the Nissa activation. Here is the Gadwick, and Pozzo has been played like a fiddle. Have a look at this. Gadwick the Wizened coming down undoing the mulligan of PV. He rips half of his library off the top into his hand, and now he is in business.
And on top of that, PV didn't activate the force specifically because Pozzo would be way too encouraged to block in a spot like that.
Incredible, incredible. What a bluff. What a sick mind game that PV just played with his opponent there, running rings around the Argentinian, knocking 3 loyalty off. That was one of the highest risk attacks you're ever going to see, and he got away with it.
Because if that island was blocked, PV would have had a once upon a time, and that's kind of it.
He needed triple blue for the Gadwick. Galaxy brain plays from Paulo Vitor, Damo de Rosa, and look at him sitting there, cool as a cucumber.
It's technically possible to like untap the island, but that was the idea, right? Is like you can attack with the island because you can untap the other one with Paradise Druid and that, but it would still cost a card off Gadwick, and that mana was quite important.
So Pozzo now in the unenviable position of having to rebuild after having his pants pulled down there by Damo de Rosa. And he's going to do that by getting on the front foot. Here they come, the creatures at Nissa. So Nissa's going down, no way, no how. But Gadwick is going to trade with the Wicked Wolf. No, we'll see the activation of the food. And that keeps Nissa around for at least one more turn.
And Paulo now has access to all the mana in the world. The Mystical Dispute's going to have a hard time landing its target now.
Yes, especially with that Nissa online. All those lands ready to go. And Damo de Rosa, Hydroid Krasis, once upon a time to find some more business. Couple of lands as well to continue his mana development. Here is a Hydroid Krasis. My goodness, Pozzo is just slamming and jamming. If he finds a blue land here, okay, that's fine.
The problem with just going Breeding Pool untapped go, Island Go would not sell much.
Yeah, but Breeding Pool untapped is very clear, right?
Right, because I mean, Pozzo's either bluffing the Mystical Dispute or not. So I think Pozzo here kind of has to play the Gilded Goose just because this may not be the best. PV just drew a bunch of cards, so probably not leading with Hydroid Krasis right away. Although it's possible PV with Nissa at 1 will want to. But regardless, he will probably go for that Krasis because while the flyer can get taken out, the card draw cannot.
Yeah, that's the thing here. Well, look, Pozzo now he's taken out a full spread classified ad saying, hey, everyone listen, I've got a copy of Mystical Dispute in my hand. No hawkers. And now, a once upon a time from PV in the end step. Let's have a look at what he can find here.
It looked like the choices were Wicked Wolf or Brazen Borrower. With PV's life total not being so threatened, I like the Wicked Wolf here as an option to get rid of Hydroid Krasis and down the line being a really threatening board presence. Brazen Borrower, the advantage is you can bounce the Elk and start putting pressure on walkers. And it is a little cheaper because while you have to pay 5 mana for the full effect, it can be split over 2 turns.
So Damo de Rosa, he will have put his nose to the wind, and he would have sniffed out that Mystical Dispute, and that will be factoring into his calculations as we head into this next turn. He's going to have to play around this weird Mana Leak type card, and takes Brazen Borrower off of the Once Upon a Time.
Remember, Paulo mulliganed to 5, and it does not look like it happened.
No, not at all. He's in a commanding position after having, again, run rings around his opponent here. And let's see what this next... This is a key turn. This is a key turn. Slow and steady wins the race here for Damo de Rosa as he considers his options. Big attacks now, both of them going after the Oko.
And yeah, I mean, there's not much you can do.
Yep, another one bites the dust.
I like how Paulo is using the Nissa post-combat a lot. It's actually something that I think more players should do.
Maximizing use of mana rather than anything else, yeah.
Right, but like a lot of players will just do it pre-combat because it's almost always the right play. But Paulo has been in more spots where it was the correct play to wait. Like that island attack, after all, he could have untapped an island in that spot to have free blue for Gadwick. So the fact that Nissa was used post-combat was very important in that situation.
4 mana in pool now for Damo de Rosa, up to 6.
And we're going to probably see a large Krasis.
So 7 now, potentially more. You can see very clearly that Damo de Rosa is playing around Mystical Dispute here, leaving extra mana untapped. 7 in pool right now.
And you could be wondering, why not just do it for maximum? I mean, it gets countered, that's okay.
You still draw a stack of cards, but you need to defend your Nissa.
That's exactly it. And you want the big flyer.
So this is a Crisis, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a Crisis here for 5? For 6. For 6. Okay, after the Paradise Druid was tapped, it's now a Crisis for 6. And 4 mana, or sorry, exactly 3 mana available left over there to pay for any Mystical Disputes. It will remove 2 blockers here, so Pozzo kind of can cast it as a bit of a feeling of dread almost. And I think he's going to do that.
Yeah, it makes complete sense to do this here. You want to take Nissa, who shakes the world, off the board, and this is the best way to do so. It's also at minimal cost because you could attack with Krasis and the Elk, which is a low cost.
There's also another factor here at play. You're not going to get any better value out of that Mystical Dispute. Pozzo knows that Damo Rosa knows about the Mystical Dispute, and so he's going to make hay while the sun... Well, it's not shining, but it's kind of poking out between the clouds, and he's going to make the best of it while he can. Back to Pozzo now, who has Gilded Goose, Paradise Druid, Once Upon a Time in hand, and he's going to fire off the cantrip here, look for something good. Ooh, okay, all right. Well,
oh, there's a Crawl Harpooner at the end of the rainbow.
Yes, that was, well, it wasn't even very nice rainbow, was it? It was one of those sort of, you know, scungy ones you can only see behind some of the clouds there. And but the Crawl Harpooner is, how much, what are we looking at the way?
4 power, so it cannot take the Krasis down on its own.
Okay.
That does mean that if Sebastian Pozzo attacks Nissa, who shakes the world, Paulo is less encouraged to block just because a Crawl Harpooner could trade. And a 6/6 flyer in a matchup is really important. Normally there are a few ways to deal with it, but when Hydroid Krasis can't be dealt with as a body, it's a real issue.
Here's the Goose.
And I kind of like this attack into Nissa because Wicked Wolf can simply make itself indestructible. You don't care too much about the 2/2 Hydroid Krasis, and yeah, you just see Paulo go, yeah.
And that is a direct result of that Mystical Dispute. So Pozzo there, very clever play. I mean, look, we're getting to the point of the game where Pozzo is sitting on a card that is almost dead. A mana leak when you've got an active Nissa, when you've got 500,000 lands in play. And so Pozzo very cleverly recognizing, hey, I need to get maximum value out of this card that is increasingly becoming worse and worse as it rots in my hand. I'll use it to tap down 2 of his blockers. That's going to guarantee me getting rid of the Nissa. So what is really impressing me here is that even though we are seeing next level play from Damo Rosa, Pozzo is rising to the task. He's no slouch. He recognizes he's up against one of the best in the world, but he's standing there and giving a very, very good account of himself.
And I mean, I think Pozzo's a really good player, knows how to normally navigate matchups. But PV reverse course, and that look at that hand, it's so with options.
It's so stacked. But look, full credit to Pozzo at this point, fighting what is an uphill battle. But I think as well, just the psychology of this bloke. He's sitting there, he's still calm and collected. He's really under the pump.
This is
he is holding it together marvelously in the face of some quite astonishing adversity.
Yeah, and here Paulo dealing 15 damage potentially.
It's a huge attack. It's a huge attack from Damo Rosa.
And then has access to play a free 1 Flash Fire, another Petty Fept. Can then next turn play Nissa, who shakes the world. And I just don't see how Pozzo can come back out of this.
A masterclass display here from Damo Rosa. And this is what we've come to expect from this bloke. He is an all-time great.
And the problem here is you could technically block 2 creatures, have them go to the graveyard. That would allow the Crawl Harpooner to have 6 power and take down the Krasis. And I think that's why we see this block. It might look strange to just chump block at this stage in the game, but essentially Pozzo going, look, I'm never winning that game while Hydroid Krasis is in play. I need Crawl Harpooner to take it down.
Right, and that's the reason he's trying to fill up his graveyard with those creatures. Yep, all right, so Damo Rosa now moves to his second main phase. Going to play another Goose here. Of course, those forests just tapping for 1 mana now. And to follow that up, here is a Wicked Wolf, and that's going to eat up the Krasis. So things going from bad to worst here for Sebastian Pozzo. He needs something very special and doesn't find it. So Paulo Vitor Damo Rosa is in the finals of another Mythic Championship. What a stellar performance from him. I tell you what, after a mulligan to 5, he performed some acts of absolute magic to secure himself another berth in another Mythic Championship final. He's playing for, what is it now, number 7, number 8?
For what?
How many titles does this guy have?
I'm not sure on Grand Prix titles, but this would be his third win.
Mythic Championship win?
Yes.
This guy is an absolute monster, and I tell you what, Ondřej Stráský has got his work cut out for him. I want to take a little moment, though, to of course, talk about Sebastian Pozzo. A truly incredible performance from him. A very talented player who has made has really put himself on the map with this. One of the greatest minds in South America there. We described him already as the engine room of the South American team, and so it's great to see him at the top of his game, playing in a Mythic Championship semi-final like that. And I'm very confident in saying it's not the last we've seen of him.
Right, and a lot of the times he's just very invisible. He managed to be constructed master, but no top 8 in that season. He was in the Team Series semi-finals. Finals.
In the finals, yeah.
But lost to Team Ultra Pro, and that was the Ultimate Guard.
Yeah.
My bad. In the finals. And then now finally comes to the limelight, and I know we will see more.
Absolutely. This
he
is
has
the
the
beginning.
skills and the deck building talent that we do see more of him.
So we will see Sebastian Pozzo again, I am certain of it, but not today, because it is all about Paulo, Vitor, Damo, Rosa, and Ondřej Stráský. We are going to head down to the floor. Tim Willoughby is standing by with PV.
Holy wow, that was quite the semi-final. Paulo, it feels to me like you have some special skill over and above Rage Gale and Magic the Gathering, some sorcery when it comes to 5-card hands in these sorts of situations.
Yeah, I was going to play, the 3 games I was going to play that match, I'm only going to 5 all 3 of them.
It's like you don't want to give yourself the advantage of being on the play. You're going to play it on hard mode the whole way through, and hard mode, though it may have been able to come through, I want to talk to you about, there was an attack with an island that I don't know how many people in the room, how many people in the world would have made. It looked super risky from the outside in. Can you talk us through that, where that came from?
So I thought he would probably not block. I thought I was very far behind, and I thought he would probably not block because his wolf, seems more important. And maybe the land doesn't matter that much to me. But when I attacked, I kind of regretted it because I thought, well, if the land doesn't matter to me, I might just activate Nisa before I attack. So clearly I have something to do with the mana. And so I don't know if it was a good play or not. It was very risky. I'm happy it paid off, but I was regretting it once I attacked. I attack and I'm like, oh, he's going to block. He's just going to block. And I mean, it's still like, I still get the wolf off the table, which is good, but I draw a lot fewer cards and probably... So yeah, I don't know.
It certainly gave us a lot of drama watching at home. And of course, on top of that, there was playing around Mystical Dispute. Ultimately, at the point that you gave an opportunity for a Mystical Dispute to Pozzo, you already had the mana to be able to pay for it. But I can tell you right now, it may have just been happenstance, but that Mystical Dispute, it was sat there waiting for something for a while.
Oh yeah, I figured he had that in play from turn 1. I think that was my guess. When he was time for an island and played Island Go, that I figured that was likely. And then he played an untapped Breeding Pool, and then it was basically face up at that point.
Well, you're completely correct. It was in his hand from the very start, able to maneuver around it expertly. I'm not going to trouble you anymore right now because I'm sure that you need just a little breather, a little moment to recompress, because we've got a Mythic Championship final on our hands, and we're going to be able to bring that to you very shortly. We'll be heading back to the desk after these messages.